Now then, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the To Hull and Back podcast. We're very excited to do this episode, our first live one, obviously, ever, so bear with us, because Will usually has quite a bit of editing to do, because we're all useless at this. We've got, obviously, special guest Phil Brown on. Obviously, our former manager, first ever manager to take us to the Premier League. We're absolutely thrilled to be talking to Phil. So anybody watching the stream today, if you want have a question for him or you want a topic for us to talk about with Phil, do comment and let us know, and we'll try and fit it in if we can. Obviously, welcome, Phil. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in good form. I'm out of football at the moment, unfortunately, but for the first time in my life, I've got to say it's a good time for it. You know, my wife's due in about 10, 12 days' time. So if I was involved in football, it would be a difficult situation to try and tie the two of them in together. But
it would be. Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We're due on the 23rd of January. So strangely enough, you tied this one in with Craig Fagan. Craig was my assistant at Southend United, and he's due on Thursday. So, or shall I say his missus is due on Thursday.
Have you both been on a night out together or something? What's going on there?
It was one of them. He's got a lovely partner, and they've been planning it for a while. Unfortunately, the sack at Southend didn't come at a time where both of us needed it. You know, we were trying to plan our way through the season with two expectant women, one on the 15th of January, one on the 23rd of January. It was going to be a difficult period, let me say it, from a football perspective, let alone a geographics or whatever. But anyway, we're out of that situation, and we're trying to get on with delivering two children.
Well, I'm going to say from experience, I'd say it's a lot easier, obviously, to not be in a job, but, you know, delivering children's one of the hardest jobs on the planet, isn't it? So good luck for you.
Thank you.
I doubt it. Is it your first one? Is it your first child, Phil?
It is my first one with my present partner, yes.
Okay. So what we'll do then is we'll ask. I know you said you watched a bit of the Everton game in the Cup lately. It was a very good performance, we thought. We thought we'd try and tie in, maybe talking about the game, doing a normal episode kind of thing, but including you in a similar vein and asking you your thoughts on the current team and the kind of job that Grant McCann's doing. Because obviously, you know more than anybody the pressures of being a manager and the expectations of a fan base. So first off, I just kind of wanted to ask you, what kind of job do you think? Are you happy with the kind of job that Grant McCann's doing? Would you be pleased? Are you respectful as a manager of the kind of style that we're playing at the minute, the results he's getting?
I'm never one for shall we say, being negative about managers, because it's a difficult job, full stop. You know, so previous managers or former managers or managers that are out of work, casting aspersions on anybody that's in work is not my style, and I don't think it should be anybody's style, to tell you the truth, because it's a difficult enough job. Regardless of where you go, which club you're at, every club's got its own issues. You know, every club's got its own challenges, and Hull City being one of them as well. You know, your challenges on and off the field of play. Grant has been, I think, he's been fantastic. I think I first bumped into Grant McCann when he was at Peterborough, and we used to take teams when I was at Southend United. We used to take teams up to their training ground and vice versa, and we got a good relationship going. He struck me as a very intuitive, very hands-on kind of coach. Wanted to be out there with the players, wanted to be feeling what they're feeling on the training ground first and foremost. But then management is a totally different game, and I've got to say, I was very interested in him going to a club the size of Hull. And the challenges that he would face, but it has to be said, he's survived them. You know, he's still there, he's still in there, he's still fighting. I watched his team against Everton. I thought it was a great opportunity, I've got to say, for Hull City to progress, because Rafa had gone into the game, I think, with one win in the last 12, and a former Liverpool manager, so he was under immense pressure, and there was a lot for Grant McCann to be saying in his changing room about the opposition and about the negativity that was coming out of their changing room, you know. So I thought it was a good opportunity to catch Everton at the right time and maybe win the game. They did everything they possibly could, to take it to extra time. To take any Premier League club to extra time is a challenge for a club outside the realms of the Premier League. And I thought Hull played exceptionally well. I thought they were different class. I thought they looked together. I thought they had energy in the team. I thought they smelt a problem in the opposition's team, and they were ready for to take it. But it unfortunately didn't evolve that way, and they lost out in extra time, which is, anything can happen in extra time, as we well know.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, it can be, obviously, I think to be a manager, you have to be incredibly resilient at times, especially if you look at Grant McCann lately. Like, obviously, when he joined us, we played really well. We were on the brink of the playoffs in his first season come, Christmas time going into January. And then it kind of, our form literally fell off a cliff from January onwards. And it was a really bad run of form, but obviously coincided with the sort of the start of the epidemic. So obviously we had a big break, and then we came back from it, and we were still, struggling to get results, and we got relegated. And then, you could have, a lot of fans would have, were calling for his head kind of thing in the summer. But he stayed with us, and we've all, even on this podcast last season, he stayed strong. He came back and he led us to our first title in 55 years. And then we've got, from League One into the Championship, and we started maybe, barring the win at Preston away, we started quite, we had a poor run of form, but recently, since the change in system, we've sort of picked up a bit. I know we've not won in a few games now, but we've had COVID in the camp kind of thing, and it's kind of circumstances you've got to sort of try and take on board, considering the extra pressures of what he's currently facing at the minute. I think maybe as fans, we're kind of guilty of just, maybe letting emotions run the show at times, but definitely with that show at Everton, I think that this current system, this set of players, they're all young, they're hungry for experience and for to be able to prove themselves. You've got to look at the loan players like Longman and Deshaun Bernard, who are on loan from Premier League clubs, who are probably looking at either to push into their parent clubs or maybe get a summer move somewhere else. But I think, he's at times sometimes been justifiably criticised, maybe, because I'd like to ask you a question, like, regards to, if you have sort of a specific system or a way of playing, like, obviously you will have a preferred formation or, a style of player that you want to incorporate as a manager. As like for you personally, if your formation and system wasn't working, are you looking to change it, or do you stick with it? Because I think the biggest problem that City fans have at the moment, well, prior to the system change, was that we were struggling, but we didn't look like we were actively trying to change anything. So I just wanted to know, like, from a manager's perspective, what the thought process is.
A lot of these young coaches are brought up into a technical world of football these days, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think the modern day manager now is very fluid with regards to systems. Systems change not just from match to match nowadays; they change during the course of the game. And I often said it when I was managing Hull, when I was managing whoever. You do a certain freeze frame, if you like, on a TV screen or a video, or you're doing some kind of, match footage for the players to pick up a little bit of information from them and how they're feeling and how they're thinking, and then let them know exactly how you're thinking and what you think of systems, because I think it's important that. And I think the modern day footballer is now very akin to changes of formation during the course of a game, and that's not being disrespectful of a supporter when you don't see that change during the course of the game. I think if you take, and I know we shouldn't be talking about Leeds United on a Hull City podcast, but if you take the example of what Bielsa brought to English football, and he's much revered as a head coach. He has a fantastic record and history. Even the likes of Pep Guardiola sing his praises and people like that. When you think about what he's brought to English football, it's almost man to man. It's almost there isn't a system. You're picking up your man, and that's all there is to it. You follow him everywhere he goes. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I get confused with that at times, because I like a solid back four. I like a midfield in front of them, and then the rest of it, when you've got the ball, becomes more fluid when you've got people who can handle possession. And I think that's the most important part of the modern day game. You get a player that can handle the ball in any tight situation, any one given situation, and you get 5 or 6 of them that can do that, the higher you go. System, it doesn't really matter what you play at. You know, it doesn't. You can name your system at the start and say, right, we're playing 3-5-2 or whatever you want to say. But bottom line is, you very rarely stick to that during the course of the game. And I think, I'm afraid to say, that a lot of supporters hang the hat on the system as being the main failure to a game where you've lost, possibly. And it might be a lot of other things apart from the system. It could be individual errors. It could be, you know, things that have gone on in the background that you don't know anything about, that's gone on in the changing room. You know, I think there's a lot of stuff coming out in Arsenal's changing room that, you know, people are talking about Arteta being a great man manager now because he's handling really tight situations with individuals. All of these things lend themselves to, you know, what system do we want to play? Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's all about the I was going to say the welfare of the players, but it's a much coined phrase these days. It's all about the mental state, the state of mind of the group of players that are going out on the field of play. And that's the reason why I mentioned probably a good time to catch Everton and the Rafa situation, because I would have thought the whole City changing room would have been buoyant before the game. It wouldn't have been fearing Everton. It would have been very buoyant before the game and then looking forward to it. And I've always said that, you know, when you've got a group of players that are looking forward to games, it's much better than when you've got a group of players that are fearing games. You know, if you're going into a game thinking we're going to get turned over and this, that, and the other, you've got no chance. But I think where Grant was concerned, I think he did stumble upon a change of system, and it certainly looked as if the players then, because of a run of, I would add it, because of a run of results, the players looked like the system's better for them, and therefore they were going into games looking forward to them. It was as simple as that for me, Ant.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, to be fair. I mean, because this is what I mean. It was really interesting to see sort of like a manager's perspective on it, because, you know, like I said, us as fans, we can sometimes probably let emotions run the show kind of thing. And we all there's, you know, 20,000 people in that stadium think they could be a manager kind of thing. But for me, like, obviously, we did change system and we won 4 on the bounce with it. So obviously with that, like you say, comes confidence. But since then, obviously we haven't won. So for me now, it's going to be interesting to see how the players sort of respond to that. I mean, at the minute, performances are looking quite decent. So, you know, we're not slumping to defeats like we were prior. They're still fighting the game. We're still in it till pretty much the last minute and things like that. But so basically the next question I was going to ask you is, so when a team is on a really bad run of form then and they're struggling to turn results into wins, what can you actually do in terms of your management style to sort of flip that dressing room around and try and get them back sort of motivated, you know, enthusiastic about the next game kind of thing? Because I can imagine it's really tough if you know, losing kind of thing.
I think the most important part, and I believe they're still at Cottingham, is that right?
Yeah.
The training ground, yeah. I think the most important part of anybody preparing his team as a manager, and you're going into a game where you're in a bad run of form, you're looking at individuals and collectives, and, you know, people are looking over the shoulder instead of focusing on going forward. You're starting to get a little bit concerned about confidence levels, etc., etc. The most important part is the togetherness. And if I take it back to our successful time at Hull, you know, when we survived a relegation battle in the Championship and then got promoted and then went into a Premier League where you knew it was going to be a relegation battle from minute one. But we started off in a fantastic vein of form. But I'm looking around at not just the players. I've got to emphasise that. I'm looking around at the supporters first and foremost. And you're looking at supporters that are just happy to be there. You know, they're just happy to be in the Premier League, which is a lovely place to be, don't get me wrong. So in that respect, there wasn't that much pressure on us. You know, I was actually saying to the players, you can't do anything wrong. It doesn't matter how well you play, how badly you play. This group, and I've looked at the gate attendance, and I think it was something like 24,300 was the average gate. And every Hull City supporter was coming to that stadium, and they were enjoying themselves. They were coming for the spectacle. They were also coming because they wanted to try and win the game, of course. Nobody wants to lose a game of football, but I don't think the Hull City supporters put us under any pressure whatsoever. So you have to point that out to the players that you're going into games of football here and you are riding on the crest of a wave. It's a beautiful place to be and it's a fantastic time to be at Hull City. Just enjoy it. But then you look around the training ground and you look at the people on the periphery, you know. We had a couple that used to run Cottingham, Brian and Paula, and they were part and parcel of the furniture. They were teas and coffees at 6 o'clock in the morning for anybody that was coming in at that time. Me, of course, first in, 6 o'clock. There'd be a cup of coffee waiting for me on my desk. It's priceless, that. People might be thinking I'm talking rubbish here. It's absolutely priceless that you create an environment at your training ground that people want to come to work. And that's the key word. They want to come to work, not to come to play. They want to come to work and try and improve. And I think we had that down to a T. But I'm talking about the surrounding people, not the players, not the manager, not the coaching staff. I'm talking about the supporters took care of themselves because they just looked forward to everything that was thrown at them, whether it be Arsenal or Liverpool or whether it be a Stoke City. It didn't matter. It was in the Premier League. And then you're looking at the people that look after the players, you know, the drivers, you know, people that got drivers. And I'm thinking, whoa, hold on a second. We might be in the Premier League, but we haven't become that important that we need somebody to drive us. Get driving the car yourself. And, you know, these kind of things to keep people firmly feet planted on the ground and realizing that you're going to work. It's as simple as it gets. You're going to work and then you're picking your wages up for a good day's work. End of story.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think for me at the moment, obviously, like you mentioned just then, when you took us up to the Premier League, I think, you know, no fan really expected to have ever been in that situation. So like you say, we were there sort of for the ride and we loved every second of it. And, you know, we didn't know the next time we could be there kind of thing. But then obviously following that, obviously Steve Bruce took us up a couple of times and then we sort of hung about in the higher echelons of the Championship in his tenure as well. And then for me, I think maybe expectations of this fan base sort of jumped, and I don't know if it's kind of like a generational thing, you know, like some of the younger fans who are used to seeing top end Championship Premier League football for a few years now expect that is the norm kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think Grant McCann, in essence, I'm not not fully blaming you for the extra pressure on Grant McCann right now, but at the minute, obviously, because fans want kind of know how it's been and how it currently is, sort of thing. So every defeat sort of maybe is met with extra negativity, extra criticism, and, you know, people compare him to the likes of you and Steve Bruce and what's been accomplished.
I get what you're saying, and I think it's well worded, and you know, you're very polite in the way you're saying your things. As far as I'm concerned, I was sacked at the wrong time. Now, every manager in the country is going to say that, but I was sacked at the wrong time. You know, coming into a 10-game run in, and unfortunately a change of chairman. I thought Adam Pearson first time around was outstanding for me. When he came back, I thought he was always looking for that opportunity to get rid of me, which is a horrible place to be as a manager, you know. But bottom line is, if we had survived the second year, we survived the first year, and that created a pot of gold basically that you could go and spend. And I thought, you know, we brought one or two players in, we let one or two players go. The mentality of the ones that were let go weren't right. The ones that we brought in had to be right to keep us in the Premier League. But I'll say this, and I'll re-emphasise this a number of times probably in this interview. I'm a Sunderland supporter by trade, if you want to call it. You know, by definition, I was brought up in South Shields, and I used to go and see Sunderland. Why didn't I go to see Newcastle? A lot of people ask me that question. Why didn't you go to see Newcastle? But it was just I fancied, you know, Sunderland as opposed to Newcastle. A couple of incidences that I'll not tell you about, but, you know, my dad was a Newcastle supporter, my mother was a Sunderland supporter. It was as daft as that. I followed Sunderland, and then I realised they were the Bank of England in 1950, and we had big players, you know, Charlie Hurley and people like that in the early days, Len Shackleton. And then you realised how big the club was. And then you start going through, you know, relegation battles and promotion battles and stuff like that. And you stand on the terraces and you're expecting to get entertained. A bit like you guys at the moment. You expect to get entertained, but you expect to win the game. And that's what it was to play for Sunderland, to support Sunderland. You expected performance, you expected work. but you expected to win. Newcastle's got exactly the same problem. 100%. You know, it's horrendous at the moment in Newcastle because they're bottom of the league in the Premier League, and yet they're the richest club in the world. So they've got their own issues, but the pressure of playing for a certain club is immense. Hull City had that pressure. I remember a guy come up to me in the pub, the local pub. I can't think of the name of the local pub in North Ferriby, where I lived, and he came in to me after a game one night. And we'd won the game 2-1, and he squared up to me as if he was going to sort me out. And I looked at this guy, and he's Hull City through and through. And he went, "Do you realise what you've done at this place?" And I went, "Go on." He said, "You've given us the pride to go into cities all over the country and not expect to get turned over. You give us our pride back, so we can go into these places now with our heads held high, chest puffed out, and we can go in there with an expectancy that we're going to win, that we've got a chance of winning because of the way you've approached the game, because of the way you've approached the challenge of managing Hull City." And I loved that. I absolutely loved the compliment. At first, I was a little bit concerned because he was a big lad, and if he had sorted me out, I wouldn't have been Hull City manager the following day, that's for sure. But no, it was one of them where you have to understand that, you know, you've got to put things into perspective. If Hull have been in the Premier League, they've had a dalliance with the Premier League on a couple of occasions, myself, Steve Bruce, etc., etc. And then the first thing that happens when you get relegated to the first division is you want to get rid of the manager. It's not always the answer. That's not always the answer. You've got to drill a little bit deeper into the situation to find out exactly what has gone on and what's right about the club, what's wrong about the club. The best thing about Hull City for me, you know, that I used to absolutely love the fact that the people support the club with a passion, and once you've got that, you're halfway there. You're halfway there, but you've got to make the players realise that as a manager. Yeah,
I mean, for us, I mean, I think I can pretty much speak for every single Hull City fan that exists right now. That you really did, like, I mean, personally, I want to thank you for the best day of my life supporting Hull City in that playoff final against Bristol City. It was something that I never thought I would see. No, I've been told stories about my family who have supported City for generations, kind of thing, and they were used to us playing in the basement of football and playing teams like Kettering Town in the league and things like that. And you took us to an entirely new sort of, you know, you basically smashed us to a rock ceiling that I thought.
And just to interrupt you there, it wasn't just me, you know. There was a lot of good people.
You and the players have gone down in folklore history. You know, the staff that were there as well. That just that time and your period at the club. I mean, even the Peter Taylor reign just before, and sort of that ascendancy from that stage of Hull City's history is just it will probably never be replicated. Well, it won't be for a long time, I can't imagine. And so I just think that every City fan would like to thank you for what you did for our club.
Thank you.
And I think we'll talk about your time at City because obviously you came in and we were in quite a precarious situation. Obviously, you took over from Phil Parkinson. We were fighting relegation in the Championship that season. I think I went to Derby away, which I think was your first or one of your first games you took over, and we drew 2-2. I think I was there that game, and the team just seemed to be completely revitalized and completely different. And so what did you do then when you came in? What did you change from obviously the first half of the season? Because we sort of found it from nowhere.
It's a good question. It's a good question because you don't particularly go in there to deliberately change something. You know, you go in there, you look around, you find what's wrong. What's going wrong? Why is this team not performing? You make sure that you keep the rights, you know, and that can be individuals, it can be, you know, it could be the training ground, it could be the routine, it could be anything. I love the training ground at Cottingham. I thought it was private. I thought we had a facility that we could expand. It could, you know, I'd been involved in a backroom staff at Bolton Wanderers with Sam Allardyce, and we had a very similar place, training ground at Exton. Which was 7-8 miles away from the stadium. So it was sort of a separate entity, but it was private. You could get on with your business, as it were, you know. And sometimes that business can be it can be hard. It can be brutal. It can be, you have to get a hold of players sometimes. You have to make sure that you've got the right group of players, that they're all pulling in the same direction. And I thought one or two of them weren't. But you find that out at the training ground on a day-to-day basis, Monday to Friday. Come the Saturday, that's your window of opportunity as a group of supporters. You only see the team for, if it's one game a week, you only see them for 90 minutes. And that's a window of opportunity for you guys to see, well, what are these people doing for 5-6 days? Are they preparing properly? Are they, and sometimes you see preparation on a Saturday, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just see individuals playing football together. But other times you see organisation, you see hard work, you see the sort of the DNA of the manager, and it comes out on that 90-minute window of opportunity, as I say. But what did I change? I don't think Phil Parkinson for 1 minute was a bad coach or a bad manager. I think he was, at the time, he was one of the most sought after lower league managers at Colchester United. He had done a fantastic job, and I think he was in a shortlist of about 4 or 5 managers at the time when he got the job. But he also had 4 or 5 clubs that he could choose from, and so that just shows you what you were getting. But then it didn't start well, and the next thing you know, I get a phone call from Adam Pearson saying, "Will you come and help Phil on the training ground?" And I'm like, surely it's Phil that phones me to ask me if I can come and help him, not the owner. Yeah, I've had words with him, this, that, and the other, and I wasn't quite enamoured by the invite. So I picked the phone up to Phil straight away, and I just said, "You do know what's going on behind the scene? Yeah, can we meet?" And we met at the hotel in North Ferriby, and we had a good 3 hours, 4 hours, and I just said, "I'll be on the training ground tomorrow." It was exactly what I wanted to hear. So I had, ticked the box of the manager more importantly than the owner. And don't get me wrong, that is important as well. But when Phil, when I didn't keep him in work, and that's the crux of the matter. I was assistant manager or first team coach with Colin Murphy as well, and when I didn't keep him in work, I felt disappointed. Don't get me wrong, I was really disappointed, bitterly disappointed myself that I hadn't kept him in work. So anyway, consequently, when you then take the reins as a caretaker manager, and it was a joint effort, if you remember rightly, Colin was in the background and he was doing his bit, and what a great experienced guy I could draw me, some kind of experience from. And deep down behind the scenes, I knew Colin didn't want the job, but in front of the cameras, to the media, he was telling everybody he wanted the job. That was all part and parcel of his game, but he was a great guy, fantastic guy, and knew how to manage a changing room full of, I was going to say troublesome players, but characters. I would say more characters. Your John Parkins of this world. We had match winners in the changing room, but he could also lose a game out the changing rooms in the modern day media, because that was gaining momentum left, right, and centre. People had, social media outlets that can find out exactly what you're doing at any one given time. So John had to, start towing the line, as it were. If not, he's going to take us down. So there were certain things that had to be addressed, and I thought we did, and I thought we did successfully in that period where, it was a hell of a battle for survival. But that last game, or second last game, I think it was, at Cardiff away, when we won 1-0, and we survived in the championship. That's as big a day for me as what it was at Wembley, playing against Bristol City. And I don't mean that disrespectfully at Wembley or Bristol City or the championship. I'm just saying surviving in the championship and then meeting the new owners, and it just moved so quickly after that. It was like we were on a train that was going fairly fast, and I was driving it at that time, and I just had to keep it on track, I had to keep on the line. But it was a difficult period for everybody at Hull, because, new management then, new ownership. You were probably thinking, what next? There was all sorts of things going on in the background, but we managed to steady it and get it on the right track in that season that we got promoted.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, you kept us up that first season. The second season, we ended up being promoted to the Premier League when we were, I think, the bookies' favourites to go straight down. Can I ask you, and hand on heart honesty, what were the club's aims that season?
What were the what?
what were the club's aims that season? So was it just to stay up, and we somehow just sort of rode a consistency wave and got promoted, or did you genuinely have the aim to get us promoted that year?
Paul Duffin and the ownership of the football club, they came to me, and we went to a hotel near Scunthorpe, Paynes, Forest Paynes Hotel, and we had a meeting before, and they were talking about a 3-year game plan, and that went public. And I know a lot of you guys will know that story, but that was the game plan. They wanted promotion to the Premier League, but it was a 3-year plan, and that took a lot of pressure off me. That took an awful lot of pressure off me, because at the end of the day, I had put enough pressure on myself to try and get promoted that first year. I knew survival in the Championship by the skin of your teeth the previous year. You don't want that. You don't want that feeling again. It's a horrible feeling. It's you've got a good group of players coming in day in, day out, willing to roll their sleeves up and wear the shirt with pride and all of them things. And to be involved in a relegation battle again would have been a disaster. And it started off that season. It didn't start off the best of ways. I mean, 9 or 10 games in, I think we were just hovering above the relegation zone, and then we just went on this unbelievable run. And I always remember the turning point. We played 2 games on the bounce. I think we played Southampton away and then Preston North End away.
Yeah, we got battered both games, didn't we?
Yeah, we got absolutely battered. The Preston game could have been a lot more. I think it was 3, and Southampton was 5, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I had brought JJ Koche in. I brought Henrik Pedersen in. I brought a couple of big names in from Premier League football, only because of my contacts at Bolton. And we were raising the profile of the football club, but the standard of performance wasn't being raised, So now you've got an issue as a manager, when you've brought in bigger players who everybody at the club, including the likes of Nicky Barmby, are going, come on, who are these? What are they here for? If they're not going to contribute, then they're no good to us. And it became that, it became a sort of a local boy telling me, without saying them words, but telling me in no uncertain terms, if he ain't pulling his weight, we can't be carrying a JJ Kocher, we can't be carrying a Henrik Pedersen. And he's absolutely spot on. But the one thing about Nicky just every time he played, in the early days, of my tenure, he couldn't really play 90 minutes week in and week out, or Tuesday, Saturday. So we had to make the pitch smaller. And that's what we did. We started designing ways of playing, starting from Bose Mile, who I thought was one of the best distributors of a football in his hands or from the deck. We had to make the pitch smaller, so we started condensing areas of the pitch, getting the second ball and playing from there. And Nicky was just quite simply brilliant at that. So we made the pitch about 60 by 40, as it were, as opposed to 100 yards by 100, 75 wide. And people might ask you, how do you do that? And football people will know what I'm talking about when you make the pitch smaller. You do. The modern day game is so open, and everybody's taken a leaf out of Man City's book and people like that, that I'm not sure that even the likes of Nicky Barmby could survive in them, in them circumstances. But at the same time, that's up to us to make our tactics to fit Nicky. And when we could get him out Saturday, Tuesday, then we've got a chance of winning games of football, because he was quite simply too good for it. He was brilliant. He was top class. So that's part and parcel of what we planned during the course of that development of us as a team. And, signing players like the lad from Manchester United, what's his name? Fraser Campbell. Fraser Campbell was just a great signing. Caleb Folland had the same kind of pace and dynamics as Fraser Campbell, but Caleb liked to come short and Fraser liked to go long. So we had little combinations that could, upset defences, upset the opposition. And we had bravery and we had strength of character. We had lots of things that you could admire about her. But the most important thing was that halfway through that season, we were mid-table and nudging at the doors of the playoffs. So we were gaining in momentum. We were gaining in character. We were certainly gaining in confidence. And then all of a sudden, another board meeting. And it wasn't 3 years all of a sudden. It was 1 year. We have to get promoted this year. So that's quite simply how it went that year.
because that's interesting, because I thought, obviously, because as fans, we don't really understand, like, obviously, it's not always made public and it's not always obvious what the club's aims are. I mean, you've obviously got exceptions in your huge clubs like your Man Cities and that need to win the league or win trophies kind of thing. But for a club the size of us and that's not really been in those situations very often, I was always interested to know kind of like what that planning was throughout the season, or if it changed kind of thing. Because obviously, if you've just survived relegation, the last thing that the fans expect is to then get promoted the next season. So it was phenomenal, and it was a great season.
But like we've been talking about systems being fluid, I think your plans have to be as well. You have to be transient. You have to move with a batch of results, not just one, not a knee-jerk reaction. But I keep on going back, and I will do, to these games where this sounds silly, but I'm gonna tell you the story. Me and Phil Huff, who was club secretary at the time, but he was in control of a lot of things that I didn't think a club secretary should have been in control of. I think it was more a director of football situation. And you might ask, what's the difference? Well, a club secretary, an old-fashioned club secretary, used to handle everything that really was, you needed to get out the way. You needed to get any little issues and problems out the way so that the players could just go onto the field of play and perform. And ticket situations, wives, families, where people were sitting, all of them, what I would class as incidental things for a manager or a player on match day. Phil was brilliant at it, absolutely brilliant. Anyway, long story short, in this 2-game scenario where Southampton away and then Preston away, something as silly as me finding my family were in the away end at Preston North End, running the risk of being basically attacked, being hurt, being whatever. I found that out, and I thought, there's something wrong with the club here. There's something. It doesn't sound like I'm making too much sense here, but you'll understand what I mean. There's something going on in the background that I need to stop and I need to put right so that the club can move forward. And it really was an incidental, a basic, a running of the football club that had nothing to do with the game. But you have to get your club in order. And anybody with Phil Huff's experience, this should never have happened. I find my family, Brian Horton's family were in a different place. I think Brian Horton's family were in the front of the director's box. Now, if anything, that's where your family should be, as the manager of the club. But anyway, long story short, I had it out with him. Next day, me and him went toe to toe. The owner got involved, the chairman got involved, and it was a revamp of the running of the football club. And from that moment, I'm not saying that was the reason, but from that moment, it was almost like a weight had been lifted. Everybody started realizing that I was the manager, I was in charge. When I said something needed to be done, it was done. And my word, when you get them things right in a club, you'll be amazed at what happens on the field of play. Yeah,
I mean, it's like you said, that's another, because I wouldn't have even considered anything like that. Because to me, obviously, I would assume that your owners, your directors of football, anybody who's technically in charge of the club in terms of the affairs and off-field things, you would always assume is like sort of the final word on things. But because for most people, I would imagine that the manager is only expected really to manage the football team kind of thing. So it's interesting to say that you can actively influence how the club's ran and how to change it if it's not working. Because like you say, it's at the end of the day, if something in the club is wrong, it needs to change, doesn't it? Because otherwise it's going to affect your job and the way. But
the point I'm trying to say, Ant, was I shouldn't have had to do it, but I did because I found out. I found out through a circumstance.
Yeah.
And if things are not going on in the club, if you're a manager of a club, that's the word for me. If you're a head coach of a club, that's a different argument. If you're the manager of a club, you should be in control of the director of football, the sporting director, the head of recruitment, the club secretary. Everybody should be answerable to you, and that's what I wanted because I had Brian Horton behind me, and Brian was driving this as well. Brian was saying you need to make them decisions, not somebody else, and he was absolutely spot on. Call it old-fashioned if you want to, but he was absolutely spot on. You could actually call Hull City at the time an old-fashioned club because of the way we managed it, but it was bang on, and that's why we got promoted.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much. I mean, we're not going to complain at that. You got us some of the best memories that we'll ever have as City fans. So thank you for doing that. We'll touch on the Premier League then. Obviously, before we go on to some questions from some of our listeners and that. I mean, I personally, I don't know about the other lads on here right now, but my expectations for that season wasn't high. But like you say, the fans just wanted to be there. They wanted to have the experience. You wanted to see us go toe-to-toe with some of the best players in the world, some of the biggest clubs in the country in terms of a league fixture instead of the cup. You know, we were equal to them on the pitch for 90 minutes. And then the start that we had and how well we played and being top of the table and, like, you know, players like Giovanni that were just lighting up the league and managing to bring in, you know, likes of Ian Ashby and Bo Ismail, who had been in all 4 divisions, and Andy Dawson, for example, that tackle on Theo Walcott at the Emirates, which is probably one of our most famous ever wins. You've managed to get players that I mean, this is credit to them as well, obviously, and their character and being able to adapt to different situations. But to take these players through the Football League pyramid and then make them, I mean, more than a competitive match for some of the world's best players in the Premier League. I mean, you must have took immense pride sort of watching them do that on the pitch on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I've always thought, you know, as a player who didn't come into football until after an apprentice electrician role at, you know, on the banks of the Tyne, I didn't come into football until 19, 20-year-old. And I always wondered about the recruitment scenario at every football club. You know, how does it work? And I knew Sunderland's because I got an invite for a trial. The reason why I'm telling you this is the only reason I'm saying it for is how much luck is involved in recruitment. How much luck is involved in, you know, passing a trial as a kid, getting accepted in a football club. How much luck's involved, but how much hard work's involved. And I think it's a bit of both. But the luck side of it, you know, for somebody like, as you said, Ian Ashby, to play in all 4 divisions was quite phenomenal. It's quite phenomenal, that, because if you said when he was scouted as a young lad, what division would he play in? Somebody would have said 4th division, and that would have been it. But then he goes 3rd, then he goes 2nd, then he goes 1st. How does, and it's only down purely and solely to mentality. If the mentality of that individual is not right, there's not a chance. But then you've got to be in the right place at the right time. And Hull City was the right place for Ash. I'm saying for Bo Ismail. Bit different for a goalkeeper, would you agree? Bit different.
I mean, to an extent, maybe, yeah. I mean, I think Boaz was, I think he'll always go down as one of our best keepers, but I think obviously the caliber of opposition that he's coming up against in terms of, you know, like regular world internationals and people who play for the country kind of thing that have won trophies and that. I think maybe for a goalkeeper, it would be extra pressuring. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I think the fact that he managed to jump up the leagues was quite, astounding.
I lost you there. Were you asking the question to the other guys there, Anne?
No, I just said I don't know if them 3 agree with me. I think it'd be extra pressuring for a goalkeeper at the top level to have gone through sort of them leagues and keep that consistency league by league. Because obviously,
but if you look at the technical side of Bo Ismail was very good. Distribution was very good. So he's probably coming into the Premier League at the right time. You know, you're going through that transient period of football being not Route 1, but it's more of a direct game to a game that's very, very technical now. And Bo's was probably at the start of that. And we were encouraging, you know, we thought, you know, the likes of Sam Ricketts, Nathan Doyle, who both played right back for us. Andy Dawson, I thought were technically good enough to handle the ball. Michael might have been a little bit of a struggle, Michael Turner, but Anthony Gardner came in then. Who else did we have? Wayne Brown we had. Stephen Mayakolo. 1 or 2 of the centre-halves that we had wouldn't have been at the top level in terms of distribution and technique, but at the same time had a good mentality for to stop the opposition from playing. So when you look at, you know, what we achieved with the likes of Ian Ashby playing at the highest level, I think, you know, going back to what you were saying, system-wise, it suited Ash because we protected him. System-wise, it suited Andy Dawson and the 2 fullbacks who would be the ones that could get exposed if you think about it, you know, with wingers, etc., etc. They could get exposed, but we made sure, even at Arsenal away, we said to Giovanni, you're not playing the 4-3-3 now. You're playing, You know, you're stopping the opposition's fullback for getting at Andy Dawson, which he did a great job for about 60 minutes until we released him and he scored that worldie. So there's certain things that you look at, the players that we had at the football club. They were playing above themselves, you could say, but at the same time, what's above themselves? You know, why can't they play in the Premier League? The most alarming thing, or the most surprisingly pleasant thing, was that we all did it together. So we all got promoted together, and we were all going into the Premier League, into the unknown, the likes of, you know, Dean Marnie and people like that, who never really played there. And surprisingly, we were galvanised by it. You know, surprisingly, we sort of regrouped and said, "What's the fear?" You know. But I think one of the key. A lot of people ask me about the Arsenal game and the Spurs game. We were very lucky in the Spurs game. There's no doubt about it. I think it was something like 23, 24 shots they had. And Bose Mile had an absolutely outstanding game. And then the little Brazilian pops up with a great free kick. And everyone remembers that, and everybody remembers the Arsenal win. But the West Bromwich Albion away win, yes. We were absolutely, if any of you guys were in the game, we were absolutely backs to the wall, tin helmets for 25, 30 minutes in the first part of the game. Bose was pulling saves off there, hitting the crossbar, the post, were clearing them off the line. The supporters behind the goal must have been thinking, this is gonna be a landslide. And we won the game. I think we won the game 3-0.
You did.
And it was one of them where I don't know whether we rode our luck at the right time or whether we just thought we've got nothing to worry about here. But at the same time, we ended up winning 6 out of the first 9 games. It was just, I don't know. It was just absolutely fantastic. A great place to be, and certainly a great club to manage at that time.
Did you find yourself pinching yourself when you saw it? Did you ever think you would be a manager of a team top of the Premier League, let alone Hull City?
Well, you never know how your career is going to go, do you? You always, I think, my beliefs are that, you know, I was an optimistic, always have been, glass half full, as it were. You try and put that into people. If it's not in them, it's very, very difficult to put it into them until something positive happens to their lives. And then you have the argument of whether, you know, was that meant to be or within the right place at the right time? There's all sorts of things to analyse. I mean, you're asking a guy who employs psychologists at Bolton Wanderers and some of the stuff that we did there. You know, we went, if you analyse what we did at Bolton Wanderers, we went from the 4th division to Europe. When you think about it, I left the club in 2004, 2005 to go to Derby County, and we had just qualified with our league position in the Premier League, which was 6th top. We qualified for Europe. So what you can do with a group of players and what's going on between the ears is probably the most important part. But we made sure that if, you know, we talk about leaving no stone unturned. If you are physically prepared, if you are mentally prepared, you've got a chance. If you haven't got the technicality, then you're in trouble. So we must have had a level of technicality in my team, but we were physically, I mean, I'll guarantee you, well, I don't know if you know the stats, but we traded at 1.8 injuries per week in that season in the Premier League. When you've got a squad of 25, 1.8, you're going to have headaches picking a team for sure. But the point I was going to say is you were strong, you were physically capable, and we were ready, we were prepared, you know, and that is important. When some managers, you hear them now, they can't get their best team out. I know COVID's a big problem at the moment, but some of them have got 5, 6, 7 injuries every week. In a squad of 25, it's like 33% of the squad. We had 1.8 in 25 every week.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because I don't remember us having many injuries. Now you've mentioned it, we always seem to have a strong side every game. It was very rare we were missing a key player. But I think what I take back from the Premier League side definitely was that we seem to have a mix of players that really understood the club and what sort of what was needed to get results at the time. But then obviously you recruited well in the sense that you brought the likes of, you know, you brought Giovanni back. I mean, a key starter to that really is bringing Dean Windass back. Obviously he's Hull City through and through, so he was sort of the catalyst, I think, especially in that first season to stay up. But having the likes of Dean Windass and then Giovanni in the same team is just like, you know, it don't really make sense on paper, but somehow on the pitch it did. I know Dino didn't feature that much in the Premier League. because obviously we had Marlon King, etc. And but then you've got the likes of Ryan France, who we signed from Alfreton Town in the non-league when we were in Division 3 back then, who was also mixing it in the Premier League with some of the greats. And I think what you managed to do, and what you and your coaching staff, that set of players at the time, you were a unit, you were together, and it's so important to go into games where you're facing the likes of Manchester United at Old Trafford and Arsenal at the Emirates, where you've got to go into that and trust each other and have a mutual respect for everybody that's on the pitch. Everyone knows the job. And I think
that's a good point, Ant, because mutual respect is important. And I think the most important part, when you mentioned Manchester United away, my head flashes straight to it. 4-3 defeat.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about it, 4-3 defeat, the first question that gets asked me in a press conference afterwards was, you must be very proud of your team today. And I've just jerked back the way I jerked back there. And I went, proud of my team? What are you talking about? We're the first team to score 3 goals at Old Trafford in 7 years. Now that, when you sit back and think about it, thanks very much. But we haven't won the game. We haven't got a point. We haven't got anything from the game. And I think that's the thing about respect. I don't think we were respected enough when we first started, and that's the reason why we won 6 out of the first 9. And when teams did start respecting us, that's when we found it tough. People were saying, by the way, if you let these play, they can. And you've got to fight for every ball because they want it, they want it badly. So all of that was part and parcel of the opposition's preparation. But the most important thing for me was, that we were win. It doesn't matter win, lose or draw. We wore the shirt with pride. And I think the only day that we didn't wear the shirt with pride was when we were 4-0 down at half-time at Man City, and hence the reason why I did the talk.
I feel like that question was coming. That's why you put that in there.
All day long. That's the beauty of it, and a lot of people want to know the reasons and the whys and the wherefores. I've got no qualms about answering questions about it because I know why I did it, and I hope the whole City fans did as well.
To be fair, obviously, like the second season didn't go the way that any of us wanted, and especially not yourself. And like you said at the beginning, I do think it was the wrong time. With 10 games to go, we might as well have seen it out and not really. I feel like the club admitted defeat at that time and just accepted going down. I think all City fans would have liked to have seen you at least seen the rest of the season out. For especially with what you'd accomplished with the side, I think you deserve that minimum, especially even another go in the Championship for me. But like I said at the before we started this talk about City, I think all City fans, you are literally heralded as one of the greatest managers that we've had. We fully respect everything you did for the club and the heights that you took us to, the memories that we've got. We've had some phenomenal games and achievements, multiple trips to Wembley, probably started by yourself, with the playoff final. So what we'll do now then is we'll move on to, we've got quite a few questions from some of the listeners that want to know, sort of picky brains kind of thing. So what we'll do is we'll go around in a clockwise fashion. Then we'll start with you, Will. If you've got a question that somebody sent in or that you want to ask yourself, just pop it over.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking this, but also Al first in sport. I said, who is probably your favourite personality you've managed at Hull? I know there'll be a few.
I feel like you can have a few contenders.
Yeah.
Favorite personality is it's a good way of asking the question. Not greatest player or best player. Favorite personality. You've got to look at Windus for that one. For different reasons. From Ian Ashby. When I talk about personalities in the change room, the personality of the team, I thought was more Ian Ashby. And what I mean by that is never say die, roll the sleeves up, basic kind of player, no airs and graces, no frills and spills. And then the odd occasion, something might happen that you wouldn't expect it. Ash would do something that you wouldn't expect. And that was Hull City. We'd have a little bit of magic in Giovanni or Nicky Palmby or whoever. That would bring a little bit of magic, but bottom line is, I always say to a lot of people, I had the group in one day, and I think it was a Sunday. It was a Sunday. I know for a fact it was a Sunday because of the reason why I'm telling you the story. And it was a cold winter's day in November, and they're all sitting in the canteen area at Cottingham, wondering what was happening. We'd been beaten the day before, and I just wanted them in on the Sunday just to talk. I wanted to show them video evidence of what I was seeing. I wanted to show them video evidence of what I wanted from previous games, etc., etc. And I'm sitting talking to a group of players inside, and Giovanni's got more coats and jackets and jumpers and tracksuit bottoms and all sorts of stuff on than you'll ever believe. And he's sitting there, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to get through to this kid unless I can point something out to him. And I know Giovanni was a preacher. I don't know if you guys knew that, but
No.
Giovanni used to go to his own church on a Sunday, and he used to preach in his own religion. And I got wind of this, and I thought to myself, well, that's more or less what I'm doing. I'm actually doing that now. I'm actually bringing them in on a Sunday, and I'm preaching to them about what we need to do to put this right. And I had it out with Giovanni there and then, you know. This was my church. The training ground was my church, and this is where we go on a Sunday if we don't perform on a Saturday. And I think I got my point of view across. Ian Ashby certainly knew what I was talking about. Dean Winders certainly knew what I was talking about, and Nicky Barmby certainly knew what I was talking about. So in terms of personality, I would have said I loved working with Dean because he had a great attitude towards the game, fantastic smile on his face, regardless, in the face of adversity. But probably Ian Ashby personified the team more than anybody.
No worries. Joel, have you got any questions?
Yeah, so we know the club tried to sign Michael Owen in your time. So we're thinking, were there any other players that you tried to sign that got away?
Any players that got away, the biggest one that I can say, and you'll know this one, is Bobby Zamora.
About Zamora.
And I've gone down, I think I've gone down, just 2 seconds. I'm just running out of battery. I'm just going to plug in. I've gone down as saying this. I did the pro license diploma last year, and they were asking questions like that. You know, they were talking about experiences that I'd had at Hull City, and I gave the report on Bobby Zamora when I got him off the train from London, and I took him to Swanland, and I took him to one or two of the fishing resorts, you know, the fishing places that you can take them to, because that's all he was into, you know, away from football. That's all Bobby wanted to do. And when I took him there, and he got on the train back after about 3 or 4 hours of visiting Hull, I knew he was sold. I knew he wanted to come, but I wasn't too sure about the agent and how much it was going to cost at that time. So when I got to the nitty gritty of that argument, as it were, I went to my chairman and I just said, it's going to cost us this much. And he said, do it if you want to do it. So I went back to Brian and Steve Parkin at the time. And this is the part where the diploma was wanting to know my idea on the game. Your sales pitch, if you want to call it, your how you impress upon a backroom staff that have got more games under their belt as managers than what you have. You know, Brian Horton was in the 1,000 game club as a manager, and Steve Parkin had about 300 or 400 himself. And how do I impress my opinion on them about Bobby Zamora when the option was Jan Vennego of Hesselink and Jose Altidore, so 2 for 1, as it were. And the figures mounted up that the 2 for 1, the 2 would have been cheaper as well in terms of the financial side of the game. Unfortunately, I didn't do it well enough, and them two managed to convince me that the 2 other players were better than Bobby Zamora, or better options, shall we say. Now, it's easy to argue in hindsight to say that, you know, Jose Altidore, we got him at the wrong time. Probably you would say Jan Vennego of Hesselink, we probably got him at the end of his career at the wrong time. But I thought Bobby Zamora would have carried us into the final third with quality and kept us there longer, so that the defenders would get more of a breather on the halfway line because we were playing more football in the opposition's final third. That was my theory. I allowed them to shoot me down, and I'll never, ever fault them for it because they were priceless for me. They were brilliant as a backroom staff. But I allowed them to talk me out of it, and we went for them two instead of Bobby Zamora. So he's the one that got away.
Good answer. I forgot about Zamora, to be fair. Nathaniel?
This is a question from Leo Shakespeare. He wants to ask if Sam Allardyce was ever an influence for you, and maybe is there anyone else in the game that you go to for advice?
Yeah, it's it's no secret that I worked with Sam, and again, the beauty of Sam is you don't work for him, you work with him. He emphasised that upon me the first time I met him. A lot of people thought we played together in a team at Bolton, but that wasn't the case. Phil Neal actually let him go, having just lost out at Wembley. And Sam went across to America for one of his last years and came back with lots of ideas about coaching and management. That I then came to Bolton Wanderers, so we missed out on each other. When we did come across each other at Blackpool, I was a player coming at the end of my career, and Sam just became the manager with Bobby Saxton as his assistant manager. And what a great guy he was! He had enough managerial acumen about himself as well. But where Sam was concerned, Sam influenced me at how good he was with a group of players, how intelligent he was, how ahead of the game he was. A lot of people think that Sam was a big, hard centre half, and that's the way he managed his changing rooms and headbutting people and stuff like that. It was absolute rubbish. The most important thing where Sam was concerned was getting the information and knowing the right information and getting it across to the players, and that's what he used to do on a regular basis. So he did influence me in terms of my managerial style, but I would never ever say in a million years I'm anything like Sam. I'm 100% Phil Brown, and I think Sam Allardyce is 100% Sam Allardyce.
So I think you can tell because obviously with working with Sam, like you say, you surely would have picked up. I mean, he's one of the most experienced managers in English football at the minute, isn't he? So you could have got advice and influence from far worse, I suppose. We've got a question from another Hull City podcast. This is the Tigers.
Sorry, and I think at the end of that question, you asked if anybody else influenced me, and without a shadow of a doubt, Brian Horton. I couldn't not answer the question without saying that Brian had a big part to play in the way I managed Hull City. And I thought he was outstanding for me. Steve Parkin was outstanding for me as well. Don't get me wrong, but Brian became very, very close as a friend on and off the field of play. It would be remiss of me not to mention Brian in that.
No, that's fine. So we've got another Hull City podcast. It's the Tigers Down Under, the good friends of the pod. They've asked, what was the hardest element of football management that you needed to adapt to make the step from Championship to the Premier League?
Probably the part that eventually got rid of me, I think. Understanding how it was, it wasn't at a time where social media is anywhere near what it is now, but it was coming. There's no doubt about it. You're talking about 10, 12 years ago, understanding and recognizing what social media and the power of social media had over players, first and foremost, but then the influence that it could have on your changing room and the influence it will have on your club eventually if you don't control it. I was probably at that cusp, if you like, of social media becoming a big problem in the game. And I didn't really help our cause by exposing the changing room with a half-time team talk. That's what I'm trying to get at, So the biggest adaptation I should have made or could have made would have been to understand that it's not just the supporter on the terraces anymore. You've got the keyboard warriors, what everybody calls them. You've got people behind the scenes that influence without even showing their face. And not just that, you've got owners, chairmen, directors who are influenced by it as well. So the game is without a shadow of a doubt, from the days of 11v11, kicking a bag of air around and cutting your head when you head the ball and stuff like that. Them days were well and truly gone. And the modern day phenomenon that's around at the moment is just a different game. So not adapting to that, I think, was probably one of my biggest flaws.
That's fine. William?
Bear with me. I'll just find the questions again that I had. Are there any sort of players that you wish could have been able to keep hold of before you lost them at all?
Keep hold of and not let go. You're talking about, I probably let Sam Ricketts go a year too early. I thought, he probably deserved another year with me, or with us, shall we say. And I think he was disappointed when we did let him go. The Michael Turner scenario was something that I think was drilled into a lot more from a political perspective and from a financial perspective than what I was led to believe. And that was a hard part. What I was led to believe was that it was worth 8 million to the football club. And then to understand that, lo and behold, it was a lot less than that, was a disappointing part of my time at the club. But, things like that happen in the game of football. I think that's what we're all used to nowadays. I think that's one of the main reasons why you do have directors of football and sporting directors and people like that can go in front of the manager and explain the financial package and the scenario of what happened, this, that and the other. When Michael was around, it was a direct phone call, first and foremost from Rafa Benitez, who was trying to get him at Liverpool. And I thought Michael would struggle at Liverpool, and I gave my opinion on that one. He would be expected to handle the ball a lot more than what he was doing at Hull City. And I go back to it. I don't think Michael was brilliant at handling the ball, but he was a bloody good defender. He was 9 out of 10 every week in terms of defensive qualities. But then to be replaced sort of by Paul McShane from Michael Turner, who had been through the mill basically at Hull City and knew what it was all about. I think Paul came in and we had to start again with Paul, So there's certain things that did go on at the time at the club that, you'd like to think at that time you had full control over. But something was going on in the background that you didn't have control
over. Joel, you got the next question?
Yes, one of our listeners, Joe Palmer, has asked that were there any players you signed that you thought would have had a bigger impact than they actually did when with the club?
I'll give you one off the top of my head. Peter Halmosi.
Yeah.
I thought Peter, when he first came in, I thought he had all the quality with the ball that was required. Peter in the modern day game would be an outstanding player. Peter in the modern day game, I'm talking about this new technical game that we're witnessing now. Peter would be playing for Arsenal. He would be playing for a club in the higher division. But in the day, when you could still have a little tap at a winger or make physical contact with a wide player, I was disappointed in that side when anybody did have a go. Me being a fullback in my time as a player, whenever you hit a winger, it was up to him to get himself off the floor and get back at you. And if he didn't have that quality of character, then you've won. You've already won the battle, regardless of the technical side of them. But I think in the modern day game, I think Peter would have been outstanding. And when he came to us, I was expecting that on a game by game basis, and he didn't really produce it enough. Thinking about anybody else now, obviously Jimmy. A lot of people are questioning the Jimmy Pollard scenario, but hand on heart, I think it was the right move for the club at the time. The club was willing to spend £5 million on a player, a creative midfield player, and then Jimmy gets injured in the first game, and I'll never forget that getting on the coach at West Ham after the game, and somebody told me it was exactly the same player that did him the first time, Scotty Parker. I found that hard to believe. It's a bit of a pill to swallow first time, never mind second time for Jimmy himself. For somebody to spend £5 million and wages, and then to not have that player available to you probably for another year, that's putting you under pressure. That's chairman and owners and supporters looking at you as a manager then and thinking what you're going to do about that now. You've spent the money. What you're going to do about it? But you had to close ranks. You had to try and win games of football without Jimmy Bullard. It was as simple as that. That's all we could do, you know.
Nathaniel?
Henry Clark wants to know about the playoff final. He's asking, at what point did you think you might be able to win?
About 94 minutes. It's
same as us then.
To be brutally honest, did we ever plan for a 1-0 win in any game of football? You don't, do you? It just happens that way. And when that goal comes, okay, it came in the right moment in the first half for us. And then at half time, I'm talking to a group of players, and one of my centre halves is injured. Wayne Brown's thigh had tightened up, and rightly so. He shouldn't have gone back out. He should not have gone back out. And it was one of them where I just said to Michael, you have to stay alongside him. You can't come out. You've just got to stay alongside him. And if we're playing in our half, then we've got space behind their back four for the turn and use the pace of Caleb Forlan and Fraser Campbell. So it was one of them at half time. I thought, can we hang on to a 1-0 when you're going back out there with 10 men basically, and a different tactic and a totally different tactic. But we just had that, I don't know, we had that spirit about we, you know, we had that courage, we had that sort of character in the team. And I've spoken to many Bristol City fans since. I'm down in the Cotswolds now. I'm not far from Bristol, and you bump into them every so often. Worst day of their life. That's the game, isn't it? It's the worst day of their life. It's the best day of our life. It's the best day of my life as a manager in my career. And I'm looking along to Gary Johnson. It's the worst day in his life. And, 6 months later, he's out of work and I'm flying high in the Premier League. So the difference, the chalk and cheese difference is phenomenal. So when you expect to win a game of football, wow, no chance. And I mean that, no chance until that final whistle went, did I think we were going to win that game.
I mean, the second half itself, I think we can all remember, was quite tense, wasn't it? They had a few chances towards the end and a couple of body on the line kind of defending from the likes of, I think Sam Ricketts made a really good block at one point, which stopped pretty much a certain goal. And I think I can remember Michael Turner throwing himself on the line as well. They really did earn that win in the second half because Bristol...
I can't believe Wayne Brown played that entire second half injured.
I know, I didn't know that. I couldn't tell. But
I did not know that at all.
No, I mean,
it was unbelievable.
Really.
That for me surely personifies exactly what we were all about. I said to every player that if we get to the Premier League, and this is well documented, you'll know what I'm saying, everyone would get a chance of playing in the Premier League. Wayne Brown, of all people, probably was the one player that might struggle with the pace of the Premier League. Just his reading of the game was normally excellent. His distribution, left foot to Richard Garcia, was probably one of our better balls, diagonal ball to Richard Garcia. We'll go and get the next one. There's lots of things to like about Wayne and defensively, but pace wasn't one of his greatest assets. And then consequently, when we got beat 5, in the second game, we got beat 5 off, the third game, wasn't it, against Wigan? We got beat 5 at home. And I think Amir Zaki and Emil Heskey was up front for them. And Wayne had a bit of a torrid time, and he didn't play another game after that, if you remember rightly. But I'll never forget what he did for us when he came in at half time and said, "I'm struggling." And we didn't have a centre half. If you have a look at the bench, we didn't have a centre half on the bench, so we had to go back out with Wayne and Michael Turner. So full credit to the lad for his character. Absolutely priceless what he did for us that day.
Yeah. This one's a bit of a two-parter. So obviously we've mentioned the famous or infamous halftime team talk, whichever way you want to look at it. So Ross Theobald and a couple of us on Twitter as well have asked the team talk on the pitch. Did you think that sort of negatively affects the players afterwards? Obviously, because I don't know if it's just coincidence that the form seemed to turn after that game. I mean, it was a heavy defeat, obviously. But in terms of the game itself, we obviously drew the second half 1-1, didn't we? So you could argue that it maybe had a positive effect on the game. Do you think that some of the players maybe took that personally, kind of like an embarrassing situation?
I think maybe one or two did. and I didn't do it for that reason. I did it for a very well documented reason where one or two players had let us down. They'd been out the night before, which was Christmas Day, and they let the team down. That wasn't your atypical Hull City performance in the Premier League. We were all about hard work. We were all about graft and shape and discipline, and put your foot in, put your head in, and a little bit of flair. And it was just not an atypical performance. Having said that, Man City were an outstanding team, or they were making their way towards being an outstanding team. They had Robinho in there, 33 million. Our budget in its entirety was 16.5 million, so there was twice as much in the budget in one player. So all of that you can level if you want to talk about, finances and business and stuff like that. You can talk all day about it, but I wasn't. I was all about character and making reference to what my team looks like. The DNA of Hull City at that time was hard work, and we'd let you down because two players had let us down. So that was the top and bottom of it. But if you guys are true Hull City fans, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. In the next game we played Aston Villa at home, and we had a penalty given in the 89th minute, 0-0. We had a penalty that was given to us. Ashley Young handled the ball on the line from a corner, and then the fourth official got involved with Sky down the tunnel, and he went to the linesman who was wired up to the referee. Nowadays, it's the fourth officials wired up to the referee as well, but they weren't in them days, and it was the start of all of this VAR and stuff like that. But he ran down the touchline and told the assistant referee to alert the referee, it's on Sky. He didn't handle the ball, and he changed his mind and gave a goal kick. They went up the other end and scored and made it 1-0. So that was the next game after Man City. That's against Aston Villa. So that's the point I'm trying to get across here is, did I lose the change room? 1-1, 4-0 down at half time. You make a couple of changes. Craig Fagan comes on, scores a goal. So we draw the second half. I'm not about that. I'm just about the character of the team. The result was gone at 4-0 down. I would say 99% of games are lost. But the following day, or the following game, shall I say, was Aston Villa at the KC Stadium, and we should have won the game 1-0. VAR got involved before VAR was invented.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's interesting, because you wouldn't think that would be allowed, surely. Like, I can't imagine an official is allowed to watch live television and then influence an on-field decision from that. Was there no temptation to maybe try and appeal that in some way? I know obviously you can't then replay the game.
I'm all about improving the game. I'm all about improving the game from a technical point of view and whatever. But the laws of the game, I'm all about as well. If you break the law, you've got to be punished. The officials broke the law. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't a handball on the line. But the referee's given it. The referee's given the penalty. He said he put his hand there and then pulled it away, and the ball went over the crossbar. But he's given the penalty. He's never changed his mind, this referee, in probably about 40 years of refereeing. And he changed his mind because of the influence of Sky to the fourth official who ran down the touchline. I think the fourth official was, what do you call the referee, bald referee?
Do I say Mike Dean?
Who?
Mike Dean.
No, I don't think it was Mike Dean, no.
Was it Howard Webb?
Howard Webb, there you go. Howard Webb ran down the touchline, and he told the assistant referee, who was standing in line with the line because it's a penalty and everything's lining up for it. We're just about to take the penalty. And the referee said, goal kick. Now that, for me, should have been investigated. It should have been drilled into. Who's broke the rule there? We haven't broke the rule. The referee's made a bad decision. He's give a penalty. Now, that's the game. That's the way it goes. Sometimes you win them, sometimes you lose them. But the fourth officials got involved with the intervention of Sky down the tunnel.
Very interesting. There's a follow-on from that as well, because obviously Jimmy Bullard scored a penalty at the Etihad when we drew 1-1 and sort of replicated the on-pitch team talk with the team at the time. What were your initial thoughts when you saw it?
Initial thoughts were I didn't see it. I grabbed a hold of Richard Garcia to reshuffle the pack I think it was about 6 or 7 minutes to go on the clock, and that was the equaliser, 1-1. And this was a year later after being drubbed 5-1. So it's a sign of progress, if you want to call it that. But this could sort of get that noose from round your neck that's been attached round your neck since you've done the half-time team talk. Anyway, I had a hold of Richard Garcia, and I'm telling him 4-5-1. Tell Jimmy to play as the number 10, but in a 5-man midfield and blah blah blah. And I was rearranging the shape of the team for to try and get a point or try and get out the game with something. And then I got pulled at half-time. I got pulled at full-time by BBC as I was walking down the tunnel at the Etihad Stadium, and they just said exactly that question you've just said to me. And I went, "What team talk? What are you talking about?" I didn't have a clue what had been said. And then I witnessed it on the screen, and I just burst out laughing. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
Good. At least you took it. At least you took it well. Will, you got another one?
I've just noticed on our actual YouTube. Have you ever been close to like getting back involved in the club in any way?
Not in as much that I think about 4 or 5 years ago, when the Alams were really flying this Tigers flag and change of colour, change of this, change of that, and the club was in serious. There was a possibility it was losing its identity. I actually went public and went against the Alams, and because of that, I don't think that I've ever been considered for a position at the club since. It's one of them in football. Sometimes, you have to toe the line. We get that. You have to say things that are in support of the club, of course. But the club that I had witnessed was a club that was together on and off the field of play. The area was tight. The supporters were tight, even to the extent when I said that we were the biggest club in Yorkshire and Leeds United fans here, they were 2 divisions below us. It was one of them. And I think because of that, I overstepped the mark, and owners never forget that. Consequently, since that day, I don't think I've had any chance of working at Hull City since.
Would you have ever wanted to, then, following up from that?
Oh,
would you have
100%.
Ever wanted to have been
My
involved?
word. What a great football club. End of story. No, I'm not saying that for any other reason. I'm not saying that because a job interview out daft like that. It's just, if regardless of whether I supported Sunderland, I think of all the clubs that I've managed, including Bolton Wanderers, I think I was closer to people in Hull and the club itself. When you get close to a football club, you understand the ways of it. I was going into schools. I was talking to the schools about 3 years of deprived fishing industry. No industry in the area, and this, that, and the other. I was trying to understand how the public perceived you as a manager, perceived you as a club, privileged position that we hold, and all that. I remember working on the banks of the Tyne, and then I've gone up and down the Tyne a couple of times in the last couple of years. There's nothing there. No shipyards, no coal industry. And it fascinates me how the Northeast survives, in what industry. I've got no idea. But then you look back to your days at Hull City, the fishing industry with the 12-mile radius had been smashed to bits, and you had 3 generations of families that were still coming to games, still affording to come to games. It was just phenomenal. And then when I spoke up about the owners of the club, that's where you've got to be careful. Sometimes I just jump in because I'm that supporter that's standing on the terraces at the Fulwell end at Roker Park. I'm that supporter. Sometimes you just want to voice your opinion, and the best way to do it as a manager is to make a team win games of football, and then people listen to you.
Did you have another one from previous questions then, Will?
Yeah, I've got one more from it. So I've got the Ginger 42, great name. Excluding like the playoff final and say the Arsenal games, and what was like your favourite game, like looking back as a City manager?
It's a good story. I think the Cardiff game was a great day because I thought if truth be known, Cardiff were a better team than us at that day, but we held our own. We had a nervousness about us that defensively we were quite solid. And then when we got the goal, and then to be introduced to the new owners on the field of play, and then walk around doing a lap of honour, and then seeing on the big screen Leeds United getting beat. Were sort of cementing me with the club and making great memories already. But I go back to the North East background, and obviously you're a Sunderland fan, you're not a Newcastle fan.
Your sound's just gone a bit muffled, Phil.
Sorry?
Your sound just went off a little bit then. I don't know if he was covering your mic or something.
Oh, sorry. No, being a Sunderland fan, you're obviously not a black and white, you're not a Newcastle fan. But when we went to Newcastle in the early stages, the early rounds of the Premier League, we had Craig Fagan and Marlon King up front, and we had a set way of playing. We weren't just doing one channel run; we were doing two. We were doing both players were going in behind them. We were going to stretch the living daylights out of them, and that was the simple game plan. But on the evening of the game, we were staying at a lovely hotel out in the sticks, and there was a wedding. Probably about 250 Newcastle United fans that were clearly going to be an issue, going to be a problem. And I phoned up my chairman. And I just said, "This is ridiculous. If we stay in this hotel, the police will be out during the course of the night. There'll be fire engines coming out. The alarms will be going off. It's just 250 Newcastle fans all on the drink, and we're trying to get sleep and preparing for a game of football." He said, "What are you asking?" I said, "Get us out of here." He said, "Where shall we go?" I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Just take me to a hotel that's not full of Newcastle United fans." So we rehoused in the Malmaison on the quayside of all places. And you ever been to the quayside on a Friday night? It's normally it's chocker. But we actually got away with it. There was 22 spare rooms, and we packed everybody in 2s and 3s. So our preparation for the game was horrendous. And I got a phone call from the manager of the former hotel saying that you were right. He said you were right to leave. The police, the fire engines were coming to the hotel till 5 o'clock in the morning on
Jesus.
911 calls. Long story short, we go and win the game, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget, even in the face of adversity, we're walking into, you want to call it the Lions' Den at Newcastle, full house, 52,000, and we win the game. And that was in the early parts of the Premier League. So I suppose it's a Geordie going back to the North East with a team that were clearly playing for him in Hull City, and that was one of my proudest days.
Nice. Joel, have you got another one?
Yeah, one more. This is from Chris Dyer. He said, "What was or is your favourite place to visit in Hull in East Yorkshire?"
The favourite place to go, I used to love going to Swanland. There was a pub there, and if anybody's on the line now, tell me the name. There was a pub there, and it had a little lake in front of it, like a little pond. And I used to love going there for a little bite to eat or whatever. So Swanland was a place I used to take any of the players, the big hitters that were coming into town. I used to think, I'll just take them up there and show them around the surrounding places and this, that, and the other. And it sold the idea, because it's beautiful up there, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
But there's nothing better as well, by the way, than Cottingham. I used to love that training ground. I used to think the training ground was like, I don't think it was even 10 acres of land. It was only two and a half football pitches. But the togetherness and the camaraderie that we created in that environment was just quite phenomenal. I used to love going to Cottingham every day, fantastic.
Nathaniel?
I know it's not about Hull City, but I am interested anyway. Can you tell us a little bit about your time in India?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. It's because a lot of the good memories that I've had have all been British based or English based, and when I got the opportunity to manage abroad, it was something that I fulfilled as a personal ambition. I don't know if I've ever said it in any interviews when I was at Hull, but I always had a likeness to want to get abroad at some stage. I always had an idea that it would be over the pond towards America and an English-speaking country, possibly, I never thought for a million years I would be going towards India. Hero ISL season 5, walked into a changing room of 25 players, and there was 7 foreign players, 2 of which could speak English, and 18 Indian boys who all could speak Hindi, but all had different languages as well. There's about 35 different languages in India alone. And I walked into that changing room and I thought, this is the biggest challenge in my life, trying to get these people to understand me. I stood in front of them. I wrote 3 words on the blackboard, which meant honesty, truth, and what was the other one? Preparation. And I wrote them in Hindi. And the Indian boy straight away latched onto me like I knew what I was talking about. Like I knew I understood their language, and I didn't. These were just 3 words that I had down. And I thought, I'll write them down in Hindi and see if I can convince them that that's what I'm all about. I also had a player in there that was Champions League footballer, played for Rapid Vienna, a lad called Marko Stankovic, and he could speak 5 languages. So he was sort of acting as my Mourinho in everything, when I spoke to the media, when I spoke to individual players that didn't understand English, he would come in with me. So I got quite a good relationship going with Marco. So it was, that was the early testing parts, but then we then had a challenge where football was concerned, because technically Indian lads are probably top end 2nd division, which is not a bad challenge. It's not a bad, technical area, but some of the understanding of the game was left a lot to be desired. But attitude-wise, the best I've ever worked with. They would run and run and run. You couldn't stop them running. It was just phenomenal. And they were built to run, to be fair. Like 5% body fat and not carrying any excess weight, and certainly not overeating because there was, a lack of food. But it was a great challenge. And to go back there the 2nd year and then the 3rd year on the production team, I really enjoyed my time.
Yeah, nice. So I've got another question here, and I think this one will be quite, because I don't think I've ever seen this gone into too much depth. I think you especially will remember about this incident on the bridge.
Aye.
Can you go into any sort of detail about what happened and how you resolved it, kind of thing?
There was an incident on the bridge with a young girl that I don't know whether I got it right, got it wrong, but there was an incident on the bridge with regards to Nicky Barmby and Jimmy Bullard. Which one are you talking about?
The Jimmy Bullard and Nicky Barmby one, I assume.
Yeah. The Jimmy Bullard and Nicky Barmby one was Nicky was walking off the pitch at half-time at Everton, and he asked if he could say something before I said something, which was a new thing. Nicky had never asked for that kind of permission at all ever before. So I thought, well, it's normally a good thing that it comes from a player, because if there's a rollicking, I think we'd been turned over 6, hadn't we?
Yeah,
at Everton, and Nicky had a bee in his bonnet about Jimmy Bullard, about his work rate, and so he went after him in the changing room. But then he didn't understand when I pulled Nicky after that incident. He hadn't understood that he had gone personal. He had gone personal, and a manager never goes personal. A manager or a coach can't go personal. You have to point out reasons why and try and articulate them as best you possibly can, so that you're giving yourself leeway. You're allowing yourself Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on the training ground to get things right. But once you go personal, that's it. It's a cut-off point, and it's very difficult to get it back. Well, Nicky wasn't on the coaching staff. He was just a very respected member of the changing room. But he felt as if he needed to say something. Allowed him to say it, and once he started, he couldn't pull back. He couldn't stop. Anyway, long story short, the following day we're in on the Monday, and we sometimes used to do a warm down on the Humber Bridge, and the warm down was quite simple. There was plenty of give in the Humber Bridge. I don't know if you guys have ever walked across there or jogged across there. I did it quite often, living in North Ferriby. I used to run over the Humber Bridge, and there was always a little bit of a spring and a bounce in it, a little bit of give, and that for me was sometimes a good way of doing a warm down. Go for a jog, walk, and then talk to the players, and then you see that beautiful bridge, and then the river, and sometimes you get a fresh perspective in life. You know, you're looking out into the sea, or you're looking at the land, you're looking at the bridge, and sometimes it makes you think differently. It's something apart from football. Anyway, long story short, I got tied into a staff meeting at Cottingham, and I couldn't get out of the staff meeting. So I said to Steve Parkin and one or two of the sports science department, go and take the warm down on the Humber Bridge. Let me know when you're finished, and then we'll do the video when you get back. And next thing you know, I'm getting phone calls coming from everywhere. It had been reported by the Women's Institute, who were having a march that day, that there had been an altercation between two Hull City players, and obviously Jimmy and Nicky Barmby hadn't let it lie. You know, they just went toe to toe. The only downside to that is I wasn't there. I'd love to have seen that. But anyway, that's the top and bottom of it. It wasn't
Spill over from
anything nasty. It was just badly reported. It was just two players that had a point to say, and they weren't putting it down the following day. So the manager had to settle it, which we did do.
Good. Does anybody else have any questions? Is there any left?
There's a couple left, but I just want to check, what was the other story involving a bridge? Sorry, Phil.
Oh, there was a young girl on the bridge, and I honestly thought that I don't know, when you look at some people, you know, you think major problem, and that's all it was. And I managed to have a chat with her, and we're just talking, and 15, 20 minutes later, she walked off the bridge, other side of the river, not this side, not the whole side. She walked off the bridge, and then I did a press conference afterwards, and I told somebody this story, just loose, nothing heavy, just flippantly told this story. Next thing you know, I've saved somebody's life, and it was just blown out of proportion, and it was horrendous, because at the end of the day, it was whatever it was. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that's where I'm talking about, you know, that's where I had to understand that social media, that the media themselves, when you're in the Premier League, you're there to be shot at, and you've just got to pour cold water on it. You never get the real story then, you know. You never get the true Hull City, or the true Phil Brown, or the true changing room. You just get, you know, made up stories, and I think the Hull City fans deserve better.
Yeah. There's one more that I can see on our YouTube feed, and it's from one of our friends, Benedict Ferraby. And it's, what was the best atmosphere you remember at the KC Stadium? Like, what particular game?
I think it was the semi-finals, the two-legged affair against Watford, and I'll never forget the noise when Nicky Barmby scored just before half-time, because I was seriously concerned about the game, because Watford, I knew the manager very well. I knew the type of football he played. It was direct. He wasn't going to pass it. He was just going to hit the front man and try and get the second balls. And there wasn't too much technical stuff about him. About that club at the time. And then in the first 5 minutes of the game, in the second leg, my word, started passing the ball around like the way, you know, a world beater, you know, like Man City. And they were knocking it about, and they scored. And I thought, ooh, this is not what I expected. I thought he only knew, you know, knew only one way to play. And lo and behold, the Nicky Barmby goal for me really took the pressure off. And then we went the second half and won the game comfortably. Yeah. Because all types revert to norm. You know, it doesn't matter who you are, individually, collectively. You always go back to what you think is best, and you revert to type. And that's what Watford did in the second half, and we beat them comfortably, and consequently got to the final. But the noise when the goal went in, because it wasn't a great goal, it was a shot deflected,
very
went up in the air, and Nicky beat the goalkeeper, I think, on the touchline, scored from about half a yard.
Nodded it off the line,
yeah. So that noise and atmosphere and that night itself was just outstanding, and it sticks in my memory like as if it was yesterday.
Yeah, that was a good atmosphere, to be fair. Was there any other questions left from anybody else? I don't know if we've used them all. No, is there anything you want to ask yourselves?
No, I've got one. Sorry.
I've got one. In terms of the players you played, like your team's played against in the Premier League, who was the best player you'd say that you'd come against?
Best player we came up against. Wow. I mean, there were some great players in the Premier League at that time, and I'm going back. There's a story there when I'm going back as a coach. When I first came into coaching, I started with Sam at Blackpool, and then I went quickly to Bolton Wanderers with Colin Todd, and we blew the championship out of sight, 100 points, 100 goals, great season, fantastic season. But went into the Premier League with the same team, like we did at Hull, and with no fear and this and that. But we had absolutely an outstanding season in the championship. That Toddy fully thought that we'll smash the Premier League, we'll do well in the Premier League. We've got a certain style of play. That's all there is to it. But then we get sort of 5 or 6 games in, and I could see sometimes the gremlins are in where managers are concerned, and you start wondering about the opposition a little bit more than what you did in the championship. You know, you start preparing for the opposition a little bit more, a little bit better, individuals. And he said to me one day, on a Thursday, I think it was, we'd done a little bit of teamwork on the Thursday, so we knew what our side was going to be. But we'll go back to the original question, Ant, about systems and that. And Colin Todd said, would you ever... This was my homework. I felt as if this was my homework. Take it back and then bring in the answer on the Friday. Would you ever change your system for an individual? Meaning, is there a player in the Premier League now that you would man mark? And that was the question I thought at the time. I honestly, I couldn't think of anybody that I would change my system for. I don't think it's worthwhile to sacrifice one of your players to go and follow another player around, and then if he's a midfield player, or if he's a defender, or if he's a striker, you're just upsetting the whole system. And that contradicts the fluidity kind of side of the argument where I'm concerned. But he came in on the Friday, and I said my answer was no. He said, we're playing Spurs on Saturday, which I do, obviously. He said, I'm going to man mark David Ginola. And I went, all right, okay, who's this? And he went, Chrissy Fairclough.
We're losing your mic again a bit there, Phil.
Sorry?
We're losing your mic a bit there then again.
Did you hear the name of the player?
We had most of it. Just up to the last bit.
David Ginola. And I said, okay, who's going to mark him? And he said, Chrissy Fairclough. So I said, so what system are we playing? He said, we're going to play a flat back 4, which we had played 4-4-2 the majority of the time. Flat back 4, but we're playing with 2 centre-halves and Chrissy Fairclough. Wherever David Ginola goes, he's going to follow him around. So he tried it in the training session. It was difficult to try and get the opinion across because you're sacrificing somebody somewhere by Chrissy just standing in a different area. Anyway, we lost the game 1-0 and David Ginola scored the goal. So it was a counter argument against would you ever sacrifice your team selection or your team formation for one player in the opposition. I'm not saying he was wrong and I'm not saying I was right. I'm just saying I don't think there is anybody that you would do that for. But having said that, you fast forward to 12 years after me and Colin went in the Premier League in 96, 97, I think we went in. And we're going in as Hull City. I'd been in there for about 5 or 6 seasons with Colin Todd, with Sam Allardyce and Bolton. And now I'm all of a sudden there with a team myself. And week in and week out, I used to ask myself that question. Is there a player on the opposition's team that I'm going to sacrifice, say, Andy Dawson, and go man mark him? And there wasn't. There was never a player that I thought, even going to Manchester United, you know, even Robinho for Man City, or if you go to Arsenal, some of the great players that Arsenal can boast at that time. I've always felt as if we were all better suited with the system and the formation and the discipline and the mentality that we had at Hull City. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense for me. I've saved this question because I feel like this will be a really, really interesting one, and I think you're really going to struggle with this. Joe Palmer's asked, what would be your best Hull City 11? So across your tenure, no matter what year, he wants to know your 1 to 11. If you could pick your Hull City dream team, who would be in it and why?
Well, it's a difficult one, very, very difficult. where do you've got to start with Bose Mile, haven't you? That one's fairly simple, I think. Andy Dawson would be my left back for sure. Anthony Gardner, Michael Turner. Right back, I would have to say Sam Ricketts, and that's one of the reasons why I thought I let him go probably a year too early. Nicky Barmby would be in my team, and that goes back to the original question about systems. What system do you play with Nicky in your team? Ian Ashby would be in my team for sure. Just trying to think of the midfield now. If you're looking at players out wide in a side, Peter Halmosey didn't do much for us. Bernard Mendy didn't do much for us. You'd have to say, with Nicky Barmby and Giovanni in the same team, I'd probably play Giovanni as a 10 and Nicky out wide on the right or the left. You know, that thing is, people like Stuart Elliott did a great job for us, didn't he? Stuart Elliott, when you think about how we played with Stuart Elliott, it was quite phenomenal. He just crashed balls into him and he scored goals from 25 yards with his head. It's unbelievable. Fraser Campbell would be in the same team. Oh, dear me. Really, really good question. And you haven't given me any time to prepare that, but I'll come back to you.
It's better when it's dropped
with
on
an 11. I've given you about 9 players there, haven't I?
I think so. Mile, Dawson, Gardner, Turner, Ricketts, Ashby, Barmby, Giovanni, and Fraser Campbell. I don't know if you included Elliott.
No, I didn't include Elliott. No, I think Stuart Elliott was definitely not. Stuart wouldn't have done well in the Premier League. I don't think. I think he was limited, but he did fantastic for the club. So
I think you're missing a forward and a left midfielder, maybe.
I like Stephen Hunt as well. You know, I really did like Stephen Hunt.
Yeah.
I thought he wore the shirt with pride, but sometimes that little bit of a lack of pace gone his way. I would have to say Craig Fagan, wouldn't I? Because I've just worked with Craig as an assistant manager, so I'd have to put Craig in somewhere, wouldn't I?
It depends. Do you want an angry text message after this?
Yeah. Listen, I've really enjoyed that, Ant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. I think we've pretty much covered everything. I mean, there's someone that I promised I would ask this question, and I'm expecting the same answer. But someone that I know called Rich Anderson has been telling his mates for years that he has your tie. You know, from the when you took the microphone and sang on the final game of the first Premier League season.
Yeah.
He's been telling his mates for years that he has your tie that you were wearing that day, and he's wondering if you still have it, and if so, can he have it? So it's actually true.
If he's still got it, you can have it. Absolutely, no problem. As long as he's got to wear it every Saturday night in the town.
I'll tell him. I think he'll enjoy it. He'd be fine with that as well, I think. So unless anybody else has got any other questions, I think that covers pretty much everything we wanted to. Yeah?
Yeah,
Nothing
fantastic.
No? Right, so thank you for joining us then, Phil.
Yeah, massive thanks.
Really, really enjoyable episode. Thank you for giving up your midday Monday just to speak to us. I think a lot of City fans were very excited that they could listen to us talk to you, because I think, like I said, you're still held in very high regard amongst the whole City fan base. I think, you know, you'll always be welcome around our city, and we're always going to be thankful for the things you've done and what you achieved with us, and we hope we wish you well with everything you do.
I really appreciate it, Ant. Got great memories of Hull City, and I really mean that. You know, I wish I could have gone back to the club at some stage in some capacity. It's one of them where, you know, certain parts of your career, certain parts of your life, you remember them for the right reasons, you know. And I think it's because I shared a mutual feeling about the club themselves by the supporters. I think I could have quite easily.
We lost your mic there? Oh, there we we lost your mic just for a little bit at the end.
Oh, technical difficulties now.
Has he gone?
What timing?
Has he gone? Right then. I really enjoyed that. It was nearly 2 hours, and it felt like it were half hour. Thanks to everyone listening. If there's anybody still there, I think it was. It should have been a nice midday viewing for anybody that was listening. If you're listening on your lunch break at work or you're driving somewhere in car. If we missed your questions off, we're sorry. I did try we got a lot at the same time, and I tried to collate as many together as I could. I feel like we pretty much covered any possible topic that someone could have asked for us about him and more. Obviously, thanks to you three for coming on again. I feel like, Joel's technically still at work. So, it's a good job that Joel could find some time to come on. Are we going to do an episode about the Everton game?
Yeah.
I haven't got the time for it, but
I don't think I've got the time either.
Nathaniel might not be. Me and Will might have a little talk about it. We'll see. We'll let you know about that in the future. But like I said, to anyone that was watching, thanks for joining us. We will obviously be back at our usual times. I think it's Leon Court next Monday, isn't it?
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
So yeah, we've obviously got Leon Court to come on, another interview. So if you've got any questions for us to ask him, sorry, I'm live. So if you've got any questions, send them in again, and we'll try and ask them. We're going to try and get more city-related guests on if we can. But obviously, like I said, this episode, again, sponsored by 6 Yards Out, Hull City Retro. They're on the link tree, so when you click to listen to the episode, do go check them out. And as always, please support the Hull Badge Man. We have actually announced the charity partner at the minute. We are with Andy's Man Club, which, if you've never heard of them before, they're a very good charity that holds talking sessions for men that are struggling with their mental health. I think, especially in times like at the moment where people can, lockdowns and loss of job and things, financial stress of Christmas, etc. We all want more to be done for men's mental health. So partnering with a charity like them and being able to do fundraisers and actively raise money to improve men's mental health is a big thing for me personally. I know it will be for you three and for anybody listening. Do check them out and donate if you can. We are currently working on a project that you will be able to donate to Andy's Man Club through that means. So once I tie up a couple of, dot the I's and cross the T's in that sense, we will get that announced. And I think it should go down quite well. We're all excited for it. So hopefully we can announce that in the coming days. I'm just talking to a couple of people about it. So like I said, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.